call this day's meeting to order on Thursday, May 15th. It's 2:03 p.m. Marcel, can you call the roll, please?
Thank you, Supervisor. If we can have everybody by name, just start on the end. Please let us know what your name is and where you're from, and then we can go from there.
Karen Egan with San Diego Habitat for Humanity. Irene Guardia with IOC.
Adolfo Ventura with MAC.
Angela Zappia with Accessity.
Marcel, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I was speaking me.
Marcel Gresham, San Diego Housing Commission.
Stephen Russell, San Diego Housing Federation.
Antonio Barbosa, Wells Fargo.
Peter Armstrong with Wakeland Housing and Development Corporation.
Sergio Quero with the U.S. Community Relations team at Citibank.
And Enrique Mesa with U.S. Bank.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I think I'm chairing on my own today, Supervisor Montgomery Stepp. Thank you so much for being here. So next on the agenda is non-agenda public comment, and it's an opportunity for the public to provide comment on the items that are not on the agenda today. So do we have anyone that wishes to speak? I don't know if we're tuning in online or not. I certainly don't see anyone in the room, so other than my beautiful staff. But.
So no, there's no one
Okay.
here today to speak.
All right. Okay. Sounds good. So let's go on to item number 3, and that is this section where we give the task force members opportunity to comment on anything that you feel that the task force needs to know. Are there any comments? Any announcements? Yes, please, Stephen Russell.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind folks that the San Diego Housing Federation Annual Conference will be October 16th, and we are currently in the month during which we are accepting submittals for workshops. So through June 5th, please go to our website. The conference is being sponsored by Chase, JP Morgan Chase, and 2 other title sponsors. But really what's important right now is that if you have an idea for a workshop you'd like to submit, it's a very short form available on the website. We'd appreciate those submittals by June 5th.
Okay, thank you for that. Anyone else? All right, I see Jared has walked in the room and sat down, so thank you for being here. We just did our roll call. No, you're good. And so let's go on now to the approval of the minutes, and I'm assuming we have no public comment for the approval of the minutes, so I would just entertain a motion and a second at this time.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion, and anyone second? Okay. So we have a motion by Adolfo and a second by Enrique. Any additional comments on the minutes? Hearing none, we can do a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. That yes, so Karen will abstain.
Thank you.
All right, let's go on to item number 5, which is our staff report. I'll turn it over to Marcel, see if you've got anything for us today.
No staff report this morning, Co-Chair, but I will be giving the presentation for this morning, or for this afternoon. Thank you.
All right, well then that's a great segue. Let's move into our one and only item on the agenda today, the RTF bylaws amendments. Let's have the presentation, and then we'll move forward with board discussion.
Thank you very much for allowing me time to move my seat and accommodating me this afternoon. Okay, Thank you, Co-Chair and RTF members. Again, my name is Marcel Gresham with the San Diego Housing Commission, Director of Special Programs Development. This action item that you have before you this afternoon is for the approval and the adoption of proposed amendments to the RTF bylaws. As you will recall, this item was presented at during our meeting of April 17th, 2025, for a discussion item and consideration. And so just for the benefit of those who may be listening and those who are unfamiliar with the RTF, for their edification, this body has a 48-year history of service to the city and the county of San Diego and its residents. Its responsibilities are to monitor local bank lending practices and develop reinvestment strategies to increase economic opportunity and financial strength and housing stability. And the RTF also provides local implementation support of the Community Reinvestment Act. During that presentation also, we were provided with a little bit of history of the bylaws. Not only is the RTF governed by the policies set forth by both the city and the county, but also it is managed by a set of bylaws which were created and improved in 2014 and last updated in 2018. And these bylaws cover the subject areas that you see listed here on this slide. During last month's meeting, the updates reflected on this particular slide were proposed as a means of strengthening the bylaws and to reflect the RTF's current operation. And those updates reflected adding the name and purpose of the RTF, explicitly stating our purpose, elaborating on those responsibilities of the task force, also including those policies that the RTF is bound to that were created by the city and by the county, and also addressing membership and vacancies and elaborating on some of those other additional responsibilities that we have. Following the item's discussion, the co-chairs set forth a motion to update the bylaws to include the proposed updates and those recommendations of the RTF members. Those discussion points were consideration of the California Reinvestment Act, or California Assembly Bill 801, also including the potential participation of the City of San Diego Economic Development Department and the County of San Diego's EDD counterpart, participation of other financial lending institutions, including credit unions, and also the voting consideration of current banking members of the RTF who are regulated by the CRA. As a means of gathering additional membership feedback and to further inform the process, a bylaw survey was issued to the members through Google Docs and also through SurveyMonkey. The survey included 5 statement questions for response and 2 narrative questions for additional comment. An analysis of the responses submitted resulted in the outcomes shown on the next few slides. And as you can see, the first question that was posed was that the current RTF bylaws are outdated and should be revised. As you can see, 50% of the respondents agreed that this was the case. 33% were neutral in their response, and then 17% strongly agreed. On question number 2, the RTF should consider designating bank members as non-voting members. 67% of the responses were in agreement with that, and 33% were neutral. Question 3 was the RTF should consider having bank members serve in an advisory capacity only. Again, 67% of those respondents agreed with that, and 33% were neutral in their thought processes. Question 4 was the participation of other lending institutions will help further the RTF's mission. Again, this is 67% in agreement with that, 17% strongly agree, and 17% neutral. And then question 5 was the participation of the city and county economic development departments will help further the RTF's mission. Again, 60% of those agree with that, and then 40% were neutral. And in the one of the questions that asked for actual narrative comment, this is a summary of what those comments were. And I will read those directly just so you can have context to that. And the feedback was that the RTF should focus on equity, community, and revitalization of low and moderate income census tracts, promote economic inclusion for historically marginalized communities, address disparate impacts of climate change, and appointed political stakeholders and nonprofit leaders should drive the agenda with input from the banking community and the city and county staff. Forgive my typo there. But the concerns that were also expressed in those comments were that the public agency would be hesitant to drive the agenda. I don't have any additional context to that, but that is the concern that was expressed. So each member of the RTF has been provided, each of you have been provided with a proposed amended bylaws. This has been provided in draft form for your review and consideration. And should this proposed version be approved and adopted, it will be finalized on RTF letterhead. As you will note, the structure and the outline of the proposed bylaws has been reformatted and realigned under 5 major articles. Those articles being Article 1, which is name and purpose, Article 2, which is membership and organization, Article 3, which is meetings, Article 4, members and their duties, and Article 5, amendments. And each of the proposed items were encapsulated under these respective article numbers. Here on this slide, this represents a summary of the proposed amendments, which includes items reflected in the previous motion, the RTF members' feedback that were provided during the discussion, and also those that were provided during the survey feedback. One item of note is regarding the California Assembly Bill 801. To my knowledge, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, that bill is still in the legislative process. But should that bill pass, any inclusion of its requirements to the RTF bylaws may be reflected in a future amendment to the bylaws. Here on this slide, staff recommends the RTF take the following action as indicated on this slide. That concludes my presentation for today, and I now turn it back over to the co-chair for beginning the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation, and it's been a months-long process, so thank you. I know you've been working on it as well with our respective offices. So there is no public comment for this item, I don't think. So no public, okay. So we can start with members of the task force if you have any additional input or any thoughts or want to tell on yourself and expand on how you voted or what your comments were. We're here for it all. Anyone? Yes.
Well, I think 3 things come to mind here. First of all, with just the context, I think, Marcel, you mentioned not having context on the public agency staff issue, and I have enough history here to remember when you had a real firebrand of Jim Bleisner, who was the executive director, and that was during a time, I think, when the local governments here, San Diego was a very, very conservative place, and so the things he was proposing were beyond the pale for some of those elected officials. We have a political environment here now where I think that we are well served by having public agency staff working with this shared value system of our elected. So just to give some context to why someone might have expressed that concern, in the past, if the Housing Commission had been running that under those mayors, those supervisors at that time, it really would have been a very different discussion. And so the independence or almost adversarial nature of the agency back then, some of you may remember. I think, thankfully, we can put that behind us because we have a more progressive and an equity-focused council and board. Our political environment is different, so that's just a comment. Primary purpose, so this may be niggling, but when we say the primary purpose is to serve in an advisory capacity to the city and county of San Diego, might we continue the phrase and say with regards to reinvestment in our disinvested communities or something else that just like clarifies the purpose? I think we know it, and it is elsewhere in the document, but it seems like that's the first statement of what we're doing here probably requires a little more elucidation.
Thank you.
And then the voting of the banks. I mean, I think we haven't had that many votes, and I think the voting that was of concern was with regards to any political activities. It was not programmatic in any way, and so I don't know how the banks feel about if they're comfortable voting on programmatic issues and recommendations. And I would ask them and ask all of us to consider whether we are stronger or not if the banks are merely advisory, or if it's what is the actual practical effect if the banks don't vote? As long as you're here at the table, is that sufficient, or does it give us more heft if in fact you are vested in these programs through your actions here? That's a question I offer, not an answer. And I thank you.
Any response to that? I'm curious to hear as well. That piece of the bylaws came up in some of my conversations, and I think it would be, I'm open to the conversation and kind of modifying the proposal before you. At the same time, I think if we do go in some additional political directions as a task force, we certainly want to continue to be open to that and not be restricted or kind of thinking about our partners who are the banks that are represented here, who we want to maintain the partnership with, but don't, we may want to take a stand on certain things that are coming up as a task force, and certainly don't want to have the folks here that are representing banks violating their, what their job duties, right? And so that's the reason for it. And the advisory, kind of the way I envision it is, if we say as a task force we want to, I'll say something we've already done, but we want to have a very robust program for first-time home buyers, right? And we say that as a task force, and we vote on different ways to get there. And we say we're going to go up to the state and lobby for that, or we're going to, participate in trying to do some fundraising and all of those things. Like, at what point do the banks have to say, well, I agree with the concept, but I'm not going to get on a plane with you and go up and lobby, right? So I guess that's where my thought process was, is that we are not restricted, because you have, the electeds all the way on the one side, and then you have the banks all the way on the other, and kind of in the middle, right? So just making sure we have the leeway with continuing our partnership and getting candid feedback from our banks, without kind of restricting if we decide to take on a political issue, or we say, we're going to stand for diversity, equity, inclusion in our spaces, anything like that, right? That's where it came from. But I'm open to modifications that would further reflect that or not, or the discussion. So yes, please, Antonio.
Yeah, thank you. And if I'm reading well, it's giving us the option. I think it's saying just may abstain. I don't think it's restricting banks for voting. So I think it's just giving us the opportunity, if there is something involved with advocacy or something that we can not get involved, we have the option. So I don't see any problems, at least right now.
Yeah, and I think that's totally fine. To Peter.
I guess I recall a couple of issues. One was, if we had a legislative platform, part of that legislative platform is things that happen in Sacramento. Part of that platform could be things that happen in Washington, D.C., including, impacting current CRA requirements on banks. And so I think there's a couple of areas, of concern for bankers. I'll speak for you guys. The regulated banks probably do not want to take a open position on CRA reform items, I would imagine. And then on things like, lobbying before the city council or board of supervisors, state of California, maybe that's more of an open item. Maybe you guys are willing to march with us to Sacramento. Um,
Sergio's nodding.
And I think, and then I think some of the other things we talked about is what happens if we need to move with urgency on an item that has to be, there's some advocacy that needs to happen between meetings, and how much authority does the group, give the chairs? As a nonprofit or Peter, involved in community development, I feel completely comfortable delegating the co-chairs to advocate on behalf of this body in my sector, but the bankers may feel a little differently.
Yeah, good point. Let me go to Enrique and then I'll go back.
Thank you.
Or, sorry,
Yeah, no,
Sergio.
all of you, great points all around, and I think the work that's been done in the last 2 months is great. The refresher, I think, is needed. There's great energy behind, I think, where RTF is headed. But yes, my concern was, really our concern on behalf of U.S. Bank is to some extent the slowdown of the process as it pertains to advocacy. We have processes that just take a while, and they're not within my control to be able to take a stance on behalf of the bank. And so if there is urgency on advocacy, it is a process that needs to, that would have to get started on my end. So I don't necessarily have that power to yay or nay, right, and march to Sacramento. But I will say, I think the only thing, I think I did have a question on clarity on Article 3, specifically on the voting procedures. There was a reference in the survey that, bankers, the banker represented here would be more on an advisory role, non-voting members. And Article 3, Section 3, specifically item B, refers to abstaining from votes. So there's still bankers that we're still voting. So I'm just curious of the discrepancy between non-voting members and still being able to vote, and abstaining as kind of case-by-case basis.
Thank you. I think to both Peter and Stephen's point, they were trying to allow some flexibility because of the discussions and the concerns that were being shared by some of the banks previously. So this language here, although it's not set in stone, it was a means of trying to allow that flexibility. So if there was something where you guys could not, technically vote on it, but you could advise on it and still support the measure or support the initiative, then you would have the ability to do that. And then you would not put you in a position to be out of compliance with whatever your banking institution's corporate requirements would be. And so, again, that was the intention behind that specific language, and trying to allow some flexibility for you all to still advise, because it may be you think it's a good idea, but you may not be able to technically vote in support of it. Now, that's the best way that I can put it.
Okay, understood.
I think just for the purposes of the bylaws, though, that does present an inconsistency. So what I'm thinking is that we, just thinking off the top of my head, I still want that advisory group. The reason why I want that is because I want the banks to be able to be candid with us with some of the things that we are recommending, right? Like, I really want that feedback. What I don't want to do is put on the bankers like the double duty of coming to task force meetings and then being a part of the advisory committee as well. So I'm thinking we could do joint meetings, or we could do certain meetings that we'll deal with some of our advocacy stuff in those meetings, and then other meetings where the conversation is a bit different or more informative, as like how we're used to having. I don't know how necessarily if the bylaws is a place to structure it like that, but I just want to put that out there as a suggestion of, I don't want the bankers to have to do that double duty. And also it's kind of inconsistent in here because a non-voting member can't abstain, right? And so it has to kind of be one or the other. We can keep it voting and then say, clearly in the bylaws, like there is an expectation that you will have to abstain, and we're okay with that. But then if we do that, we have to think about quorum, like to make sure that we can make quorum if we keep the banks as voting members. So I know that was a lot and didn't really provide a solution, but I'm just thinking we do have to choose one or the other. So, and I'm open to that.
Just one thing to build on regarding the bylaws. I'm not sure if this comment would be specific to the bylaws or just in general. In the past, when feedback has been requested from us, it's been in a very tight, short period of time to turn things around. And alluding to what Enrique was mentioning is oftentimes the timing within the banks, the guardrails that we have to go through, the procedures, it takes time. So if there's a specific area where you would need contributions, feedback, suggestions, in general, I think having that runway would be easier for us to be a part of those conversations where we can have a deeper dive, just in general.
I have a
Yes, Irene,
question.
yes.
So on the membership abstinence on the voting,
Mm-hmm.
were you suggesting that gonna have two different groups within this body? One specifically in the advisory role for the banks in terms of the CRA, and then the other one for the advocacy role. Is that how you?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, that's what my original thought. Well, in my discussions, that informal discussions is kind of what we came up with, which was the task force should be able to vote on advocacy items, like the reinvestment task force, by way of the CRA. We should have the ability and flexibility to vote on, say, legislative platform. If there is, an item coming up at the city council or the county, and we decide to take a position on it, right? It has to do with affordable housing. There's never been that interaction with our government agencies in that way, where the electeds get a letter from the task force saying, we support this, or this will hurt the economic viability of lower income people. We haven't done that. And so the idea was that we create a task force that kind of go into that area of advocacy a bit more, right? Locally, I mentioned Sacramento, it could be nationally, statewide, whatever, but we have a lot of stuff going on right now locally that we don't opine on just because of the way that we've kind of been structured and set up. And it's still been a beneficial setup, but it has not been based in advocacy, right? And so that is the direction that I will speak for the co-chair on this, but kind of the direction we want to go. And if I recall, what I said was, when we had the discussion last time, was that in the time that we're in, we need to make some decisions about, where we're going to place our influence. And so that's really what it was. And there was some discomfort, right, with the bankers that are here, not because of their personal beliefs, but because of their duties and responsibilities to their employer, and, kind of what that separation. So that's kind of that's where it came from.
So, just in that sense, do you think it will serve this body well if we had like maybe working groups within the task force to address different elements of those needs in well-being, also understanding of those restrictions in terms of like advocacy for them, involving in advocacy because of the roles that they have with their employers?
I think I hear what you're saying. Let me start by saying I don't want to create a lot of working groups because again, this on a voluntary basis and, so I don't want to do that, but, having an advisory group, not necessarily called a committee, but having an advisory group, keeping the structure that we have right now, and then having an advisory group, that would be totally fine. Yeah, that's totally fine. Yes, Peter.
I mean, I guess I'm thinking, if we're going to meet more frequently as a board, maybe we could do advocacy one meeting, then the next month could be, advisory, community feedback discussion.
So just go back to the bylaws real quick. Let's for now not name the bankers as non-voting. Is that what I'm hearing? Because there seems to be a little bit of hesitation with that. I tell you.
Yeah, I feel like it sounds like the area that we need to revise is the membership. And that's where it says that we are 15 members, and maybe that's when it needs to be 10 members and 5 advisory board members. And we don't need to revise the other section, just the membership, and maybe including what it means to be an advisor as a bank. So is the Article 2,
And
number 1, which is the membership.
the copy that I have doesn't say voting.
This section, he's suggesting that the 15 members maybe be a 10 and 5 instead of just lumping all 15 together.
Oh,
If I'm hearing that correctly, that these 5 become advisory only.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I might let's break it. I'm going to go to Steve, and then I want to come back to that because we need to get clarity from the task force members on whether folks are okay with that.
Yeah, I'm personally, I think I would love to have the banks as full members, but I guess the question is, if you were full members and have the right to recuse, does that give you a sufficient shield from the actions that you are comfortable with your organizations? That because if the Reinvestment Task Force as a whole moves forward with a proposal, you've recused yourselves. Are you still associated with that organization and decision in a way that makes your organizations it's a challenging?
And that might be case by case, right?
Because I'd rather have you guys at the table
Yeah.
in a full way and then opting out when you need to. That's my own preference. So that's why I asked a very open question at the beginning, and now I'm going to be more specific. Does this language with the recusal, or not recusal, that's a bit different word, abstention, is that sufficient?
My gut says no, because it still would have the banking institution's names, although not on the proposal of what is going to be moved forward on, right? But it still is as a whole a voting member of said entity, right,
Okay.
that is proposing A, B, or C. I think that's where the challenge would, like, in that case, my seat would need to be taken by someone in government affairs, right? That is, and can make those decisions that would be an obvious bank. We're not able to, as it pertains to anything to do with advocacy and legislation.
Yeah, and I would agree, because if we end up sending a recommendation, it's going to show just the San Diego RTF. It's not going to show that banks didn't, they were abstaining. Like, nobody's going to read that part. So I think that's, yeah, I agree with Enrique's assessment.
Yes.
Just when I thought I was kind of like seeing the light on one side, I see the points. And I think, I'll preface this by saying, obviously, everybody who's here, there's value, right? And there's always fear of losing any or parts of that. I understand wanting to be efficient, to be relevant and timely in responses to our community. I'm also in agreement with that. I don't want to complicate, but I wonder, instead of thinking of the banking group as a, what kind of space do we find for this group, is there opportunity to then look at, do we have a different kind of committee of this task force that is called out specifically on advocacy and whatnot, and then the rest just sign on that. So then it's something that comes from that particular group, not necessarily the RTF group. I mean, I'm not prepared to offer, unfortunately, a lot more. I'm just thinking, instead of, I just want to kind of look at the other side of it. Like, if you know, it seems like we can't get both, keep you all, and then still, you know, in fairness to each banker, have that layer of protection, with the rest of us are comfortable with what we do and why we're doing it and who we're doing it for, is the opportunity really there? At least if we think that's something to explore. I mean, I welcome working directly with others on this to see what we can, but just offering maybe an alternate point of view.
First of all, I'm glad to have this discussion because it took us a little minute to kind of get everybody a little bit more involved in the discussion. So I appreciate that. And then I'm going to go to Steve, and I'm going to reserve my comments till after that.
Yeah, so one approach I'm thinking of is, we know that bodies often meet in under multiple hats, adjourn as the housing authority, meet as the council. We could conceivably, and I don't think every other month is actually going to serve us, because advocacy has a timeline that is more compelling than that. Sure. I could see a structure where we meet as the whole body, and then we adjourn to the, whatever that is.
Executive.
The advocacy, the arm twisters of the group here.
Let me just say, my primary focus, though, is that the Reinvestment Task Force, the name of it and the reputation takes first priority over any kind of additional committee. So if we're doing advocacy, I want that advocacy to carry the name of the task force. I don't want that advocacy to carry the name of the subgroup. And so that's really, especially the time we're in, I feel like prioritizing that is important. But I like the idea of kind of having, obviously we don't want to let our bankers go, having, the kind of dual purpose meetings, or adjourning one, going to another. But it did come up because we were starting to go in a direction that was not comfortable for every member of the task force. And that's just, why we're discussing it. So I don't want to, my concern is that we are accommodating the folks that were not able to participate in those conversations instead of accommodating people that are. Go ahead, Antonio.
Yeah, it's sounding like the advisory position is the one that is going to make more sense to, like, if we want to respect the mission and the objectives. And that way, nobody's going to say that we made a recommendation or we voted. At the end, we can provide, again, that good information, our feedback, and that can help make the decisions of the voting members without having the issue of us having to get approvals and having to abstain. So might be the best option, in my opinion.
Thank you. Having bank representatives as advisors, do you see that impacting the reputation or the weight of the RTF as a?
No, I do not, and I think the hesitation for all of us is that we've done some good work together. So, it's kind of like, what, why are we doing this? I know you all understand why we're at least putting it on the table to talk about, but I just want to make sure that we stay we go back to the intent. It's just like Marcel went back to the purpose of the whole organization. Then we go back to the intent of why we're having this conversation, right? And that was all. But I don't think. I think everyone being able to vote on advocacy would make us the strongest, right? That's just not where we are. And I want to try to move that direction and keep us solid as far as feedback, relationships, understanding the banking system, and being in a place where all those things can still take place. So that's really what I'm trying to do. Yes, Enrique.
As it pertains to quorum, and the fact that, yes, the bylaws are opening it up, right, in terms of who can serve on the board, can we address the quorum issue by then recommending new entities in the CDFI world or nonprofits that are in this space that are not represented here today? And so the banker's going into an advisory role, but the quorum addressing it of lack of voting, right, and you don't have enough members is, well, then what would increasing membership look like, and who do we recommend that maybe should be seated around the table as well?
Enrique, I mean, very nicely put. I think that's one angle that I was trying to, you said it better than I did, but it aligns with something that I also noticed under Article 4, Item 1, that talked about sort of, attending meetings, the expected number of meetings and absences, and sending in an alternate. I think in this one, it should be maybe the last sentence that talks about absence from more than 2 task force meetings will constitute or could potentially lend to being reconsidered. I think we should either name if they're going to be unexcused, or if this means like if the actual, designate is not here, just because I was thinking the same thing, because of the frequency of the meetings we're moving towards and the need to meet quorum. I just thought we can clarify that. I know it's something minimal, but it could become a technicality. But it aligns, once again, just considering our ability to meet quorum.
We know in bylaws discussion, minimal things become big things when it actually happens. Yeah. So yeah, I would agree with that change, just to be more specific about. I think if an alternate is here, that certainly doesn't count as an absence, and I think that even there can be excused kind of absences, but just a little bit more clarity on that is important. Yeah. Sergio, you got something?
Just going back to a comment that Antonio mentioned, membership with being a member and having the ability to abstain ourselves. That's our current procedure now, right? Okay. So I'm stuck on how, if we were kind of going on a limb here, we were to stay that route, how would that, like Antonio said, well, if something moves forward, there's the who voted or who abstained is not really going to be present there.
Yeah, you're still a part of the body.
You're still part, yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
And just as a reminder, I think there is a reason why we are the only organization like this in the country. So it's not easy to make it happen. Sure. So just to keep that in mind.
Steve, yeah.
So one way of sketching this out, I'm a structuralist when it comes to these things, is what if we have a reinvestment advisory group, which is the body of the whole, and there's the reinvestment task force, which is those voting members who are going to make the recommendations. The banks would be seen as the reinvestment advisory group members. The name on the actions, the decades of equity we have in the reinvestment task force, we do not want to walk away from or dilute. So that way is about bifurcating it, but like I say, body of the whole, and then the reinvestment task force. And you guys be welcome to stay if you want to listen in, but your names won't be on the actions under that scenario. Wouldn't be on the actions.
I like that, and I like the names that you just said, if you can remember them.
Reinvestment Advisory. Yeah. That's RAG. We do not want RAG, Reinvestment Advisory Board. RAG.
Yeah, I'm fine with, yeah. I do like that, and we can figure out how to structure the meetings and all of that. But I do like that. So we should probably take out the that was in Article 3. That's right.
It would be a note. I think it would be a note under membership and organization. That would be an A and a B. Like there's A,
will consist of following 15 members would be A, consists of these 10 members, Reinvestment Advisory, whatever we're calling the other group, would be B, under membership. Well, maybe, those, I'm hesitant, editing bylaws on the fly is always a challenge.
I know.
And as you're considering that particular type of a change, are there any other impacts to the policies that have already been established? For something, I don't have it quoted to memory, but for some reason, I want to say one of the policies does reflect that type of outline and structure for this particular body. So that may be something that has to be considered as you all are deciding upon the motion that may be made, or any type of adjustments to this draft document.
Well, I would go back to the city and county policies forming this body in the first place to make sure there's consistency, and I have those at home, but I don't have them in front of me. But again, this sort of writing, I think if we express intent and then work with staff to come back.
I think so. And the board can, the task force can ask for it to come back one more time, or can, which would probably be my preference, or can give the co-chairs authority to work with staff to get the intent. But I think since it's bylaws, it should probably come back. And it sounds like there's been, we know there's been a good amount of discussion today. So
I would recommend both, that they work with the chairs to bring something back to the board, if you are willing, and I would love to move that if you are entertaining.
Yes, I'm entertaining your motion.
So I would move that we ask staff to work with the chairs, the co-chairs, and bring back a revised version of this in June that reflects the discussion that we've had here today.
Give me a second, okay. Any other discussion, Peter?
A couple things. So on the so I guess I'm curious if we have 5 bankers that are no longer members of the RTF, but they're members of the RTF advisory group. Do we want to designate additional members? I think there's been some discussion about city staff. I guess I'm also curious if maybe a credit union or two, or maybe explicitly a CDFI or two. And then just on the city staff, I was the person that made that comment in the Survey Monkey. I guess my concern is, for instance, is having worked in the public sector, and as opposed to Steve, I didn't work for a council member. I worked for the city manager or the executive director, etc. So if we had a member of staff, I think they could also abstain from any advocacy. I guess I'm thinking, like in this moment, I'm thinking of like for instance, right now there's a city council mayor's budget cutting staffing hours for libraries, rec centers, etc. Right? And so the proposal is just to cut them everywhere in the city, right? And I guess I could see this group having a recommendation like, we're not okay with that. We want you to, I live in Scripps Ranch, to cut 2 days or 3 days in Scripps Ranch, but allow for, Logan Heights Library to be open 5 days a week. In my mind, that's equity. And so as a staff person who is reporting directly to the mayor, do I feel comfortable making a recommendation counter to the mayor's budget? Or similar, there could be, the CAO, somebody who's reporting to the CAO of the county might feel uncomfortable with a recommendation this group is taking. Now, they could clearly recuse themselves, but I like this group being somebody that would respond to these current policy discussions like that.
Great point. And I think it is more so an issue on the city side because the mayor is a strong mayor. So on the county side, it's a little different, right? It would be a little less restrictive unless there was an actual board action that went against something that this task force wants to do. Then it would be, for even them, it would be complicated. So, and by a board action, I mean a board of supervisors action that went against something. Say if I voted no on something there and then wanted to bring it over here and have you all vote yes and send a mean letter to my colleagues, that might be put a county staff member in a tough position. So, yeah, that is a great point. I think it was offered up as a suggestion because of the expertise. And so we may just, let's leave that out for now and then and just bring it up as a part of the discussion when we come back for hopefully the last time next month. Because I want to play out different scenarios in my head. But at the end of the day, we could have city and county staff come and present to us a bit more about what's going on in their respective, agencies or whatever. There's a way we can work that in, but I'm even hesitating them being a part of the other either group, because I don't know how much they can actually advise because of the structure of the public sector. So let's keep that in mind. And just in response to the comment about, just driving the agenda, I will say that it's a lot better than it used to be, but bureaucracy is still tough. Yeah, it's still a lot of folks, and stuff doesn't always get translated to the level it needs to be in that. So that's going to be part of what we have to do as well. And I think having this body as a voice in those conversations is going to be important. It's going to be impactful. Yes.
If I could ask the chair, when you're playing out scenarios in your head, and one scenario I would want to play with is whether we invite economic development staff from city and county to be part of the advisory group. So it's not just a box for bankers, but it's for a box for those folks who might otherwise be conflicted. But I think to have regular attendance by economic development, we are interacting with those individuals separately, but I think to have them part of these discussions could add value. So I would ask you to entertain that.
Okay. Yes, I will think about that. I didn't think about that aspect of it. So, and it might be best to make that a working group so that we're not subject to some of the Brown Act stuff. That is a way that I think good feedback could be provided. So, okay, anything else? I know we have yes, Marcel, please.
Chair, if I may clarify the question about the policy or the document that established the 5 lending institutions. It's actually Resolution 282628, and that was adopted back in 1993. That listed the 5 institutions as a part of this particular body.
And who was it?
That is
that the county or city?
I think it's a city. It's a city resolution, but it mentions both the city and the county as a part of this body.
So then we would have work to do to go back to our bodies, respectively, the co-chairs, and change that at that level, which I don't think would be an issue, but we would need to do that. Okay, so we'll explore on how to do that as well, and make that a part of the discussion in June.
Okay,
thank you for bringing that up.
You're welcome.
Anything else? We do have a motion and a second on the floor.
Just real quick, sorry. Under Article 5, there was something here. I think it's 5 under vacancies. The first bullet talks about if the co-chair is vested to appoint members of the RTF don't get to do so within 45 days, then the blank should be able to make appointments, but it's just staying at blank in here.
It was. Turn off your. Oh, there we go. Okay, now that part needs to be filled in with who will actually make that final determination. So that's a discussion point.
Okay, fantastic.
Yes, please.
I just saw X's there. Just wanted to.
No, thank you for reminding me. But that's a discussion holder right there.
Perfect.
So just for clarity, that will be a part of. Is this something we can all think about? That'll be a part of our hopefully final discussion next month, along with the direction that has been given, along with the city county staff question. And if city and county staff should belong to either one of the groups? And if so, then which one? We think it'd be advisory. If we agree that city and county staff should be a part of those conversations. And I know Marcel is busy writing, so he's got it all. So just let's please be prepared to discuss, and maybe, Marcel, if I could ask for a strikeout, like if you end up changing some language around, that would be good for us to know kind of what it was before and then what we're changing it to. And that way we can structure the discussion and just ask task force members to come back, if you can, with just a variation of language, if there's something that's like really calls out to you. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. And if we have no further discussion, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. All right. We're moving forward. We are moving forward. So thank you very much, everyone, for the discussion. It was very, very fruitful. And that was our only item. So we're going to adjourn this meeting at 2:59. And yes, go enjoy this beautiful weather. Thank you, everyone.